For 2018, Honda has introduced a brand new generation of Odyssey, and at first glance, the differences might be a little difficult to spot, but the interior is totally revamped, the exterior receives a few tweaks, but what I'm really interested in is to see what this car is like to drive, and that is coming up here on the Drive Guide. So the brand new Odyssey, what do we have? Well, here we have the LX, which is the base trim, and it comes with a 3.5 litre V6 that produces 280 horsepower. That's the same across the entire range. And here it has a 9-speed automatic transmission. So the outside of the car is more a tweaking than anything else, but the inside is totally different from what the previous generation was. It features this touchscreen, which I think may be one of the best I've ever come across. It's barely any distance from the wheel and it's very responsive. You do also have the volume knob here on the side. You have Android Auto and Apple CarPlay and a few other things you can play around with, like cabin control, the social playlist. I'm really impressed with just how much standard equipment comes in this car. You do have radar assisted cruise control, lane keep assist, automatic lights, the digital instrument cluster, heated front seats. You really do get a lot for the base model. There is so much storage in this car, it's really quite ridiculous. In the door cards here, you have 3 different sections up here to store your coins, your paper, whatever. You've got enough spaces to have around 27,000 water bottles. You've got a lot of space down here, a massive center console, and then this little rectangular portion here is the perfect size for an iPhone 6s Plus. I really do think it was made for that exact phone because it fits with such millimetric precision that I don't know what else you would place in there. You do have the softer touch plastics up here on the door cards and then up here on the dashboard, and then you do have them still here where you rest your elbows. One thing you really notice with this car over the previous generation is how quiet it is at highway speed. With that previous generation car, you felt really taxed driving it on a long distance journey. Things I don't like about the interior, the lower back support in the seats feel a little too firm for me. I hate it in any car when you have that molded plastic that has that fake stitching in it. And then finally, this steering wheel is about as malleable as granite. But really, on the highway, there's nothing really more I could ask for. One thing I do find puzzling about this car is that it has a sport mode. Why? This car is meant to take 7 people and all their things on long distances. It's not meant to tear around corners. I mean, what kind of maniac would even use that sport mode in an environment like that? Well, it certainly holds its gears higher, but apart from that, I really can't tell a discernible difference between the regular driving mode and the sport mode. You can go into a manual mode as well if you want, and the shifts take their time to react in upshifts, but they're actually a lot better in downshifts. But even if you wanted to take this car to red line, it would still shift for you. I will admit though, the V6 doesn't actually sound all that bad. This isn't where this car is meant to be. I'm sorry, I'm going back into town now. This is just, oh, this isn't what the viewers want. They want to know how practical this thing is. Yeah, this car doesn't belong here. In town is probably where something like this Honda Odyssey is going to spend quite a lot of its time. And I can happily reveal to you that this car drives brilliantly here in town. It corners very flat and it never feels as big as it is. At times it feels like you never have a parking space that's long enough. You barely just crawl in. We have the rear view camera that has a few different angle, so backing into a space isn't all that challenging. You do have that massive D pillar back there, but thankfully you do have a very large rear window that helps you out. And what's interesting of the design with this car is that the dashboard ends before the door, so you have these few inches of space where you can look down into this little section of glass down here where you can then see the corners of the car. And because you do sit rather high, you can easily look out to the edges of the bonnet. One thing that was always a big letdown for the previous generation Odyssey was the gearbox. I felt as though whenever you were slowing down to take a corner or just coming to a stop, the gearbox would really shunt you forward. It was rarely smooth. But with this 9-speed, there's no problem as such here. It's very responsive, it's rarely sluggish, and you do have the option to shift manually. Of course, the practicality is one of the biggest things we need to talk about with this car. So for the second row, you have Honda's magic sliding seats. So if you take out the thin center seat, you can then move those two outside seats inwards or left to right, right to left, whatever you want to do. There's a lot of customization with it. One thing to note though, and I don't know if I'm making this up in my mind or I've just gotten weaker in my years, but I feel as though these outside second row seats are noticeably heavier than that previous generations. And one thing that is really annoying is that they don't fold down as well as what they did in that previous generation, making it a little harder to get them in and out of the car. In the third row, you do have some dedicated air vents, some spaces to put things, some cup holders. Another thing that's great with the third row is that when you fold it down, you'll get a flat floor. One problem I really had with the previous generation is that the trunk lid, or the tailgate, whatever you want to call it, never seemed to open high enough, and I would occasionally, more times than I'd like to admit, hit my head on that tailgate, but I haven't had such a problem with this one. So in town, there's no doubt in my mind that this is a better driving car than that previous generation. I feel like I had a better idea what the front wheels were doing in this car, although there's no real steering feel whatsoever. The way that the car turns in, I have a greater understanding of what's going on. So as I've stated, the exterior for this all-new generation is minor at best. The interior is revamped, but the best thing for me is just the totally transformed driving experience. This car handles so much better than its predecessor. It's really quite impressive. And if you're looking to buy yourself a new minivan, if you're shopping in that segment of car, I highly recommend you checking out this Odyssey. So that's everything from me. Thank you so much for taking the time to watching this video. I hope you can like, share, and subscribe, and I hope to see you again on The Drive Guide.